We're talking Pirates of the Caribbean on this special Disney 100 episode of the Movies Past and Present podcast. Hello and welcome to the Movies Past and Present podcast. It's August 22nd, 2023, and this is episode 111. I'm your host, Stanford Clark, and I'm podcasting from the crossroads of the West in beautiful Salt Lake City, Utah. Just like my blog, moviespastandpresent.com, I'll be providing recommendations, commentary, and reviews about current and classic cinema. Thanks for tuning in, and let's do this thing. Today on this Disney 100 special, I'm joined by my friends film aficionado Jen Edwards and film critic Rachel Wagner, and we are talking about the five Pirates of the Caribbean films that Disney has made over the last few years. The first one was The Curse of the Black Pearl, which came out in 2003. That was followed by Dead Man's Chest in 2006 and At World's End in 2007. On Stranger Tides came in 2011. And then last was Dead Men Tell No Tales in 2017. Who knows if they're not going to make any more, but we're really not talking about that. We are talking about these movies that are based on the classic Disney parks ride. And these movies are interesting. We watched all five and Live to Tell. The first one I think is absolutely fantastic. The other one's not so much, but we get into that into the conversation. So here's my conversation with Jen Edwards and Rachel Wagner. Well, I'm so happy. I've got two friends on the podcast with me today. We've got film critic Rachel Wagner. Hi, Rach. Hi. And then our friend and film aficionado Jen Edwards is on the podcast with us. Hi, Jen. So the three of us, I don't know if I can brag about this. Maybe I can though, because it was quite a feat. We watched all five of Disney's Pirates of the Caribbean films, but we did it over 4 nights. So if I'm remembering correctly, friends, so we watched the first one, and which was a blast because I think that movie's pretty great. Then we watched numbers 2 and 3, so Dead Man's Chest and At World's End, and it about killed us. We could go into more detail on that. And then we watched 4 and 5, each on separate nights to help kind of get us through. But anyway, within the last couple of months, we have rewatched all 5 of these films. So I'm hoping that we can kind of make sense of our experience. Maybe it's just gonna be a therapy session, right? And I'm just so glad to have again Rachel and Jen on the podcast with me. So to start off with, what was your take on our 4 nights of getting through these pirate movies? Let's start with Rachel and then go to Jen.
Well, I have to say I was slightly upset about the fact that I suggested this, and I have absolutely no memory of that at all. I was like, what?
Yeah, we got 2 witnesses.
I think I just like hanging out with you guys.
I had pitched the idea because I wanted to have you both on the podcast, as far as as part of my Disney 100 series, and yeah, Rach pitched the idea of watching all 5 pirate movies, which I wasn't planning on doing. Because I wanted to watch the first one. That was on my list, but I didn't think I could make it through all 5 of them.
But it was a lot of fun. It was a great time. So, and like for me, I think the first film is in the conversation for perfect action adventure. We were talking the other day about perfect movies.
Yeah.
And I think this one has to be in that conversation. We forget that Johnny Depp was nominated for an Oscar for that movie, for playing Jack Sparrow. I mean, it's a huge, huge thing. And it's such an entertaining film. And then the second and third ones, they are rough sits. They are so slow and so the pacing. But I do admire the lore that they built up, and that it was all original storytelling. I think is pretty cool and interesting, and that I there's a moxie to the movies that I do admire. And for some reason, I don't know what's wrong with me. I like get into convulsions or something because I end up watching these movies like every couple of years. What? I mean, and so this was my latest rewatch, and I suppose I do appreciate them, especially when you have the slew of bland and boring and forgettable blockbuster, series that are so forgettable. And at
So, yeah.
least this tried, and I will give them credit for that. They sure as heck tried, but it still overall didn't really work. But yeah, there are things that I do admire about the second and third, and then the fourth one is the fourth and fifth one. They were just too desperate to hang on to Jack Sparrow. He became the primary character, and they really don't work hardly at all. But yeah, it's an interesting for a studio that has had almost no successful live action films. It's kind of an interesting franchise to look at.
Jen, what was your experience with our watch? And also, I guess, in rewatch, but I think many of these were new to you, right? You hadn't seen
Yeah.
all of them?
Yeah, I know for sure I watched the first two in the theater, and of course I've seen the first one several times. But I don't think I watched the third one. I didn't remember it anyway, and I know I didn't watch the fourth or fifth one at all. So these are my first watches on the flip side of Rachel torturing herself with an annual watch.
I know, Rachel, how do you
I
do it?
was just kind of wading into the waters on these. And I mean, we talked about kind of ranking them, and honestly, like 2 through 5, it's splitting hairs.
Yeah.
To the degree that I literally made a list of all the movies and then put pluses and minuses. And on one of them, I literally wrote paid the least attention. With a big old minus. Because some of them are so bloated and convoluted, I was like, I can't even keep it straight what's happening. But it was fun. And the thing is, these movies look amazing. They are some of the best made movies ever visually. And so that's not a chore, but the plots are just so insane. The bottom line is so insane.
Yeah.
And the first one is just there's such a difference. And for me, it was so fun to revisit the first one and just feel like I was on the ride. There's so much about the first one that is, I mean, a reflection of the ride that's done on purpose. But I mean, I think I said this before, but as you go throughout the series, it becomes less about the ride. And then suddenly the ride at Disneyland is becoming more about the series as Jack Sparrow got added and all of those things. So that was kind of just an interesting thing for me to think about just because I'm a huge Disneyland person. And the first one, there were just moments when I think I even said when we were watching it, I feel right. Like, look, we're right on the ride. Like, this is exactly like straight from there, which I thought was really, really cool. And just things I hadn't really put together in the whole because I had never seen them all.
Yeah. And Jen, you kindly calculated the amount or the number of minutes that we spent watching these movies. Could you please share that?
Yes, it's 737 minutes. If you watch all the way to the end of the credits, including each of these movies has a post-credit scene, which I'm not gonna lie, we didn't always wait through the end.
Yeah, we were so happy that we made it through.
737.
You know, that's 500 minutes that we're never going to get back because I like the first movie.
Right. On my calculations, the longest movie got 2 minuses.
Okay. Which was the longest movie, by the way?
At World's End.
At World's End.
At World's End is 2 hours and 50 minutes. 2 hours, 50 minutes.
Which just
so
is
long.
Endless.
So long. It's because the first hour they do nothing.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, you know, the first movie is such a delight. Maybe we just spend a little bit of time what do you think happened? Like, why are 2 through 5 just not even close to the first one?
So a friend of mine wrote this, is a big fan of these movies, and he wrote this whole long, detailed piece, a persuasive essay about comparing Lord of the Rings to the original Lord of the Rings to the pirate trilogy. And I do think that he makes some interesting points, and I do think that Return of the King winning Best Picture right around the same time period, that there's actually a big part of it, that you had, and the Harry Potter and some of the other franchises, that you had this sort of fantasy wave going on at the time.
Yeah.
And I think that everybody wanted to be a part of that. And it was also a time when these huge, budgets and huge projects were being paid off. So the Return of the King came out in 2003, and the when did the first one of these?
The original 2003.
Yeah, so right then. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was definitely influential in the whole approach in filming the last two movies, because originally I think it was just going to be a standalone, and then this whole approach to do this like epic fantasy, to kind of try to have that same sort of lore and feel, and the code of the pirates, and all that, with like the hobbits and the I think that is a huge influence and reason that they not only how critically applauded, like I said, winning Best Picture, but also commercially successful that whole series was.
I did read something that just the market was prepared for some pirate movies because they hadn't really been successful for quite a while. And so the Curse of the Black Pearl just kind of opened it up to kind of just the pirate movies in general. Again, they were very big, obviously, in earlier days in the movies, but they hadn't been for a long time.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
It really did embrace it. But I'm going to say that honestly, I think the difference is money. The first one, I really do think they were trying out this idea of turning this ride into a movie. And the success of the Jack Sparrow character was, I think, unexpected.
Yeah.
Because the first movie, which I love and is the best, I think they almost spend too much time on some of the other pirates because they thought they were all going to be equally engaging, but they're not.
Mm-hmm.
Jack Sparrow, and Johnny Depp is the best in that first movie. I mean, I think there's no other character in any movie like Jack Sparrow.
Like I said, nominated for an Oscar.
Right. Nominated for an Oscar. Yeah. Like, it's such a big, I just think that came out of nowhere. And the amount of money it made came out of nowhere. I looked it up, and this franchise is like the 15th highest growing franchise ever.
Yeah.
And is one of only two franchises I think that have two movies in it that made over $1 billion.
Mm-hmm.
Like, two of these movies made over $1 billion.
Because Return of the King made $1.147 billion.
Yeah.
And won Best Picture.
Yeah.
So
I think that there just came a point when the intent of the first one was not, all movies are about money, but was not as focused on money, in my opinion, that it was more about turning this ride into a movie.
That's a really good point, because you see it in 2 and 3, I think, still try to say focus on the lore, but there's a lot of time with Captain Jack Sparrow, in those movies. And then 4 and 5 to me really seem really almost like a money grab. It's just not. It's just not.
Five almost seems like a spinoff more than an actual part of this franchise, even though it is.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But as was mentioning, the production design, the art direction, the special effects for the most part are really great in all of them. As I think we commented on that multiple times as we were watching, like, wow, this movie looks so great. and I'm so bored. But it looks amazing, or I'm so confused. But
Yeah.
it looks so good. Um, Rachel brought up an interesting point. I know when we were watching it about how Jack Sparrow in the first one is really a supporting character, and then they turn him into a
Mhm.
main character, and it really kind of shifts the feeling of the movies, don't you think? What's your take on that? Again, let's start with Rachel and go to Jen.
Yeah, no, there's no question that he became the focus of the final two movies, especially because I mean the other characters weren't even hardly in them. But yeah, I mean, and he's just a I don't know. There's almost no examples of when a supporting character is made the lead character and that actually works. It just they keep trying it over and over again. I mean, I guess I did enjoy Finding Dory, but I mean, far less than Finding Nemo.
Yeah.
Which just like whenever they try to do that, it just doesn't work. They tried to
Mm-hmm.
do it with Solo. They tried to do it with, and it just usually I don't know doesn't work. And I mean, I feel like it's worked for some television shows have done that, like the Better Call Saul or something like
Yeah.
that. But it just they're supporting characters for a reason, and usually, like it's always easier in any series. It's always easier to like the supporting characters more than our lead character, because usually the supporting characters are the ones without the burden of the plot, and they're the ones given all the eccentricities that make them so likable, right? Like it's almost everybody likes a Han Solo or a Leia more than Luke, or a Hermione and a Ron more than Harry. Like that's true in literature as well. It's always easier to kind of to like these supporting characters because they don't have the weight of being the hero of leading the story. And so that's what creates the problem then when you make them the lead character. Then all of a sudden this person that you loved is now got the weight of the plot on them. And that, I mean, that is a brilliant thing about Lord of the Rings, is that it manages to transfer from Frodo being the primary character to Samwise being the primary character through the course of the three stories. And it's a very tricky thing to do. That is that you can tell Tolkien was a superior writer, that he's able to do it.
Yeah, Jen, what's your take on that?
Rachel, I was going to say the same thing about it works on TV, but I don't think it
Mm-hmm.
works in the movies. And I have thought several times since you said that it just doesn't work to put this side character in front. But it's also, I mean, I started to make a checklist as we were watching these movies of the things that the Jack Sparrow character had to do. Like he had to have a moment of him running with the hands up and doing
Mm-hmm.
that. He had to be at some point covered in something like mud or whatever.
Yeah.
He had to have some kind of ridiculous escape from capture. My favorite one being in the last one that we just watched, from the guillotine.
Yeah,
um
that's a fun sequence.
That's a really fun sequence. Yeah.
yeah. And then sometimes, and at some point in every movie, he's being carried like with two men on either side of him, and so he's like hip level and he's communicating from there, like in every single one of these movies. So it started to just be like a checklist, like, oh, there goes, there goes, there goes.
There's that
Instead
sinking
of
in.
being this authentic like character, he's now this
Yeah.
caricature, and it makes it into something that it's not, and it's far less fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to take him serious in most of this, because the character he created in the first one is not meant to be all that serious, to be honest, I don't think.
Yeah.
And then they made him serious. Like they made
Yeah.
him kept putting him in these very serious stories,
Mm-hmm.
and all this lore and all these things. Like it's weird that he's in the same like scenes as like pirate lore kind of stuff, Davy Jones and Blackbeard and all these things that are like, in the history of pirates. But then
Mm-hmm.
there's like silly Jack Sparrow, which
Yeah.
we love, but it just is too much.
I think the other problem that I would say in response to my friend's essays is that the thing with Lord of the Rings is that there's a clear moral imperative that's established from the very beginning of what needs to happen. And if it doesn't happen, then there's going to be these the whole world's going to be destroyed, like whatever is going to happen at Mount Doom. And that they have to destroy the ring. It gives everything clear purpose. And the other brilliant thing that Lord of the Rings does, that Peter Jackson did, is that he set up all the world building and all the lore in the first 10 minutes of the first movie. He explains, the backstory, all the different clan, that there's the elves and there's all of that is just gotten rid of, done. And so then they could go forward and tell this very simple story of one person that has to destroy this great evil. And there's people that come in and out and help, and there's there's alliances and different things, but at the core the story is actually very simple. It's this small man that has to destroy this great evil against great odds, and that's what makes it exciting. Whereas here you never have a sense of like moral imperative of like what it is that in this fantasy epic. You have Davy Jones' locker, you have these set pieces that are interesting and that have potential to be interesting, but there's never any sense of like, what is this all about? What are they fighting against? What are they trying to do? What are they, and so that's where the whole thing just becomes a problem, because I would say that the Hobbit movies have the same problem that these pirate movies have. Because the Hobbit movies have no moral imperative. Because it's just a bunch of adventures. And
a cash grab extraordinaire, speaking of.
Yeah, I mean there's no like what it is that they're doing, there's nothing. And so it's just like, if you like fantasy worlds and you like world building and you like being with these characters, then sure, you can have fun with them. But for those of us that are maybe a little fantasy averse, we need the story. We need what is the moral imperative to what it is that's happening? Why do they need to go on these adventures?
Yeah, it's just the stakes for me. I mean, in these
like
pirate movies, towards the end, I couldn't tell what the stakes were really, except for because they can be zombies. I mean, they can be undead. So even death wasn't fully a stake in this.
Yeah. There's no like equivalent ring. There's no like equivalent ring of power that needs to be destroyed.
Right.
Nothing to like focus on that, and like in the Harry Potter world, you had this great evil of Voldemort that was like the clear, this is what we are fighting against. And as it built and built and built, there were like major stakes that happen and that are, the Harry's confronted with. And so you need that, where they don't have that in this. It's never clear, like what.
Yeah. It never works, but I mean, particularly again with 2 through 5, but the like in number 4 when they're finding the Fountain of Youth. I mean, like what, and then Poseidon's trident, same thing. Is like, okay,
they need a mermaid to cry.
No.
Yeah. No. The whole thing. Those are really such good points. And then the length. Like I was just whining about those Hobbit movies. They turned the smallest book into 9 hours of cinema.
Yeah, ridiculous.
And just like what
like
really?
I can't believe that there's extended editions of the Hobbit movies. Like, that like blows my mind.
Yeah, it's just like
they were already so long.
It's so messed up. I think too, one of the things that I really loved about the first film was we had a lot of interesting characters, but there also was I think there was a great love story.
Yeah.
I mean, or this potential romance that was going to happen with Orlando Bloom's character and Keira Knightley's character, and that sort of carries on in the next couple of films, but then basically they killed off Orlando Bloom. And I thought that, I don't know. I mean, maybe it added some gravitas or something, and they wanted something that the writers liked or whatever. But I thought they're killing, they're kind of killing off some of the most interesting characters or most appealing characters.
Yeah.
What do you both think about that? You're much more well versed in this world than I am.
Well, I was going to say those are the only clear stakes in these movies is the romance. And Will and Elizabeth's come together and fall apart, and there's moments that weigh heavy on the relationship when Elizabeth has to kiss Sparrow, and all these little things, but those are the only clear stakes in the whole story. And so as they started to abandon that central relationship, it just got so convoluted. I couldn't tell what we were doing or why.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think their chemistry is so great.
Yeah.
And they're all such quality actors and up for the action in the scenes. And I think you do have like very compelling villains in design and flourish, and actors that are really trying. I Jeffrey Rush and Bill Nighy and these people that are a lot of fun. So that helps. And I love in the third movie the whole when they get married in the middle of the fight. That elevates it for me.
Yeah.
I really enjoy it. I think that's so funny and so
I'm glad
charming, and also great music. I mean, you can fault the second and third one for a lot of things, but you cannot fault Hans Zimmer for those great scores.
Yeah, it's his terrific score. I totally agree. But what do you think about the demise? I mean, not necessarily the demise, but how Will gets, punished, and he has to. I mean, he's off for 7 years, right? Is when he can have. We were joking about the common, because it's true, the conjugal visit with Keira Knightley.
Yeah.
Is that? I mean, to me, I thought that was really disappointing.
Yeah, that was lame. I mean, it would have been so much better if that had been kind of the moral imperative throughout the whole thing of him saving his father, and then and then because it starts out with him as a young boy at the very beginning, the first one, him getting rescued, and so they would have, if he had carried that throughout, it could have been really a cool thing. But yeah, that was disappointing, and you don't want, like, that's such a weird way to end off this great love story of, I gotta get kissed by you every 7 years.
Yeah.
So again, I don't think I saw that movie before this summer. And because I think like this, when that happened, I thought, did Orlando Bloom say he wasn't going to do another movie? I know,
was it contractual?
Right. Was this a contractual decision? Because I was like, why are they doing that? I'm like, he said, I'll only appear for 7 more minutes in any more movies you make. Like, what? Like, what? I honestly was like, this makes no sense. Why are they doing this to this character? I didn't know. I didn't make sense to me.
Rachel, we're going to point about the villains. I think that Jeffrey Rush really is terrific, and then also Bill Nighy. I think we all commented too watching it. His Davy Jones portrayal, particularly with all that CGI, I think it's just really cool. For lack of a better word. I wasn't just crazy about Ian McShane as Blackbeard. I mean, he was okay, I guess.
Yeah, he was not great.
But again, I think it's just almost because they didn't give him good stuff to do. They being the writers. And Javier Bardem in number 5, again, great actor and really interesting special effects. But ultimately, I just didn't really care.
Those special effects did not hold up for me, though. I thought they looked really weird. Like, it looked like his face was floating in front of his body.
Well, yeah, and I think we commented too The special effects in number 5 were probably the least impressive of number 5 were
because
of all 5 movies.
The Bill Nye, I've always called him the booger pirate because I don't. You have to be impressed that every inch of him is a visual effect. Everything.
Yeah,
There's no makeup involved, and it does look really real.
Yeah,
like, I don't know how they did that,
especially
at that time.
Yeah,
it's very impressive.
I mean, I also learned in these on the villain side that I have seen far less Penelope Cruz movies than I thought I had.
Right? Yeah,
she was an odd one too. In this, but she was great in it. I mean,
most of her movies are in in Spanish.
It's true.
Spain.
I was hoping though that Penelope Cruz's presence would elevate that film, and it didn't for me.
No,
what about for you? For you too?
Rob Marshall knows how to direct entertaining sequences, but just together the story just wasn't there. They didn't have enough of a story to tell. Like, it takes forever to even get on the journey of the Fountain of Youth, and the whole thing with that guy and the mermaids is probably my least favorite thing in the whole franchise.
Oh, absolutely.
For the record, that's the one that I paid the least attention
to. Yeah. Well, and again, same thing. Sorry, we were all there. Sorry, I know. But didn't we comment about how it was took how long? At least an hour for some of these characters to show up at all? Like these kind of main characters, which I thought was kind of weird, but then also again just dragging out these films.
Yeah,
it's so much longer than they needed to be.
It's like they had 3 sentences of plot that they said, no problem, we can do 2 hours and 20.
Right. Is there anything that's right with these 2 through 5? And I think we've commented on some of it, like with Bill Nye, some of this some of the set pieces we thought were pretty entertaining. Anything that you could think of that you thought that was right with the 4 lessons? Let's start with you, Jen, and then go to Rach.
Well, Rachel already mentioned this, but the music for sure.
Yeah.
And I really think when we talk about this, we almost have to treat that 5th one as something different, because Hans Zimmer was the producer of the music on the first one. Then he did the music for the next 3, and then he's not at all on
right. It's a different guy.
Last.
Yeah. Jeff Zanelli, which I had, didn't know him, but yeah.
Yes. And not that there's anything wrong, but it's just different. And our main characters are different. It's just, when we talk about that last one, it's hard for me to say what went right with everything, because it's almost like there has to be a hard stop after the 4th one, because something new is created. But we've talked about the visuals. The visuals are all just, I mean, they're astounding. These are literally some of the best looking movies that have been made. And they are, in my opinion, right up there with The Lord of the Rings and some of these other just grand and epic. I mean, some of these scenes are just incredible that they are creating. Some of them are not, especially in that last one.
Yeah, in the last one.
I have to say, like, as much as I think they are boring and not effective, they're so ambitious that I would rather watch them than some other franchises. I would certainly rather watch them than almost any of the Zack Snyder DC films. I would rather watch them than a lot of the Fast and the Furious movies. I would rather watch them. I mean, because at least they try. I'd rather watch them than the Hobbit movies. There's interesting stuff in there, and I guess the ambition of it all. And maybe that's why I do get drawn back to them every couple of years, and I end up doing a ranking where I have to watch them again. And so, I mean, I think I would rather watch them than the Star Wars prequels, which are also really long and boring. At least this has a much better romance than those do.
Yeah.
Well, I thought I could rewatch them just to try to figure out a little bit more of the plot.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't mean that. I mean, I am joking kind of, except for as I was like thinking about these movies and I was like, why was this and why was that? And I was like, maybe I should just rewatch them. And I was like, oh, did I just think that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
And so
true.
I agree with Rachel. They are ambitious, but they're also interesting. I mean, they're beautiful to look at and they're interesting to, even if it's convoluted and bloated, it's still I would not I just think they're at least interesting.
It's like that whole meme with Bart Simpson and the cake, and it says, "At least you tried." At least they tried.
Yes.
So we've heard rumors swirling around for years that there have been other pirate movies in development at Disney.
Mm-hmm.
With or without Johnny Depp. Do we want another Pirates movie?
Well, the big rumor for a long time was that they were going to make a movie with Karen Gillan, and she was going to be the red pirate that was added to the
Added
ride.
to the ride, yeah, in the auction scene.
Yeah, in the auction scene. And
was there not a rumor about Margot Robbie doing a spinoff?
Yeah, and then Margot Robbie was
and then they were gonna maybe do a TV show. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing, I guess, that on paper, the idea of a female red pirate movie could be fun. I mean, that sounds interesting. But I just right now do not trust Disney to make something that will be entertaining and that I will enjoy. And I mean, that's sad because I'm a huge Disney fan, but boy, they are on a rough streak. And and so I don't know. I just don't trust that they would get the writers they would need and get the story that they would need and get the that they would make an entertaining film. I think it would end up feeling like, wow, that was a slog to sit through.
Yeah. What do you think, Jed?
I mean, I think that I agree with all the things about trusting this. I would be curious maybe about a TV show over another franchise of movies. But I don't necessarily, it's not something that I would seek out in general. I would just have to be what they made and when they made it, because right now everything's getting shut down over there. And I can't imagine that some of this. I tried to do a little reading about it honestly today, and they keep saying yes, we're going to make this, and they keep not. But that's kind of Disney's thing.
I mean, I did enjoy the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, but that was a lot more to do with James Gunn. So maybe if they got a director that's interesting, and I did enjoy The Little Mermaid more than I thought. So, maybe it's possible, but I don't know, they're just not in an interesting place right now for the most part. Even in their television division. I mean, I've heard that Andor was good, but Mandalorian wasn't great, and so.
Well, and I thought too, after the success of Barbie, would Margot Robbie really stay committed to a pirate thing next? But maybe she would. I don't know.
And Karen Gillan, I honestly don't think is a very good actress, but I think she could maybe pull off. She could have fun with it. So, sure,
now,
why not?
Now that Johnny Depp is maybe a little bit more viewed favorably in the public eye, I'm not sure about that, but I guess he's been acquitted, right? Yeah. Do you think that he could ever play the role again in a way that fans would embrace?
Yeah, I think he could.
I mean, they still love to see him at Disneyland.
But I would, if I were his manager, I would tell him if he was going to do a pirate movie, for him to be a supporting role and let people fall back in love with the character and let people fall back in love with him. I think that would go a long way. If you did this red, pirate movie, and you could have him be like Red's financer and, or something, like a supporting
small
role.
Doses. Small doses.
You didn't like that idea?
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, that's what I think would work really well. And and then maybe after that, like bring them more into the franchise. But anyway, that's what I would do.
One question about the ride at Disneyland. Well, I guess at Disneyland and Walt Disney World, I think actually they might have put him in a Disneyland Paris too. But should the Jack Sparrow animatronics and that storyline still stay in the ride? Is it or do you think is it time to kind of restore some of the ride back to pre Jack Sparrow plot? what's your view on that? It doesn't matter. What do you think?
I don't think I don't think that Jack Sparrow is tainted in any way. I know a lot of stuff has happened with Johnny Depp, and maybe some people look at that differently. I don't see, because I think Jack Sparrow is just so his own like original creation that has become this beloved thing. I don't think he's tainted. I honestly, it's a neutral point to me whether it stays or goes. It was neutral to me when they put him in. I thought, "Oh, that's cool." And then the fact that he's there, my niece loves to see, where's Jack Sparrow,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so,
Yeah.
but I don't think I would miss him if they took him out.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of ambivalent about it, but they did it tastefully, so it's okay. I think keep him in there.
All right, so I know that I joked about the ranking, because I kind of ranked, the one as the Curse of the Black Pearl as my number one, and then 2 through 5 were just all kind of crap, But how would you both? Let's talk about it. If we did rank them, how would we rank them?
For me, I rank them 1, 3, 2, 5, 4.
What about you, Jed?
I was straight. Well, I was 1, 2, and 5 and 3 are kind of tied for me, and then 4.
Okay.
But I just want to say it really is splitting hairs.
Exactly. It's kind of a feudal thing. I'm the same with you, Jen. 1, 2, then 5 and 3 are kind of super close, if not identical. Then for sure the worst one is number 4.
Yeah. I think 3 gets the edge for me because I think the Davy Jones locker sequence is really fun. And I think the wedding is really fun. And so whereas like 2 is just all boring. Like so for me, 3 is definitely better than 2, but that's just me.
That pirate, is it the Pirate Council? I don't know, or whatever that
is
knocks me out every time. It's just like stand up, walk around, get a Coke. You know what I mean? It's
I
just
really hate the one pirate that turns to bugs.
Yeah.
I really don't like that.
Yeah.
Well, ironically for me, At World's End has my favorite scene outside of the first movie and my least favorite scene outside of the first movie. And so when I was totaling things up, it was like plus, minus, plus, minus, plus, minus.
Yeah, those scenes, shit.
Well, the wedding for sure. I mean, that wedding is so just fun. Charming and perfect for the franchise, in the rain and in the fight. And Jeffrey Rush is so great in it when he's like, "I'm a little busy right now." All of that is so. But I cannot stand the purgatory in the locker. All the Jack Sparrow's scene when he clucks like a chicken and he's talking to himself because he's in the locker and it's like some weird state of purgatory. I really, really dislike that whole thing. When he clucks like a chicken, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't.
Yeah, that's true. That is great.
So it was both my favorite and my least favorite scene in like all of the 2 through 5.
One of the things not to, already be this, but in number 5, when we were watching that whole finale, and I mean, you both just said it perfectly. It's just there were no stakes, and how I don't know. I hated the whole 10 Commandments thing. I mean, of this, the way the opening of the ocean, and then like that, the big pirate ship, just going along the edge with the anchor. It's like it's so dumb, and like how's that ship even doing that? I mean, not that any of this is based in realism, but still, the whole thing just.
It's true because when the ships are caught in Davy Jones' locker, it looks great.
It looks so good
compared to that CGI fest. I mean, they're all CGI fest, but one looks great and one doesn't look great.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's kind of in a way a bummer to end this series on,
Well, and another thing for me about that last one is I maybe didn't understand the stakes because when I was like reviewing everything today, apparently when they broke the trident, it broke the curse for Will, so that's how they were reunited, and I so did not get that.
Yeah,
how Bill went for I'm with you.
And so I was like, oh, and I was like, that should be that should be my favorite part here because Will freed. But I mean, he's in that movie for 3 minutes and Elizabeth for 1, and probably
with no lines.
Right. I do have to say the greatest gift that these movies gave to me was the Ask a Ninja Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Man's Chest review. If you haven't seen it, look it up on YouTube. It is absolutely hilarious. And I think about it.
Link to it in my podcast notes.
I think about it all the time when I'm in a bad movie. All the time.
What's the great quote in there, Rach, about less?
It's there's so many great parts of it that they just that everybody gets to be a pirate. Even if you weren't a pirate in the last one, you're now a pirate in this one. And then they just went around and they put a bunch of screenplays into a canon. And then a PA went around. And even that script was lost. So they just made it up every day. Today you get to be a pirate.
Yes.
It's the best. You should check it out.
It's very funny. At one point, Elizabeth is declared the pirate king. Now, there's so many issues with that sentence. So many. She is declared the pirate king.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a made-up day of the script for sure.
Right. Exactly. Well, this has been so much fun. Do you have any final words you want to say about these 5 films?
Okay, this is what I determined after trying to split hairs and rank these movies. Is that this movie is the parts. Like the first movie is incredible. The sum of its parts is great. 2 through 5, the parts, a lot of the parts are good, but the sum of their parts is long. And while it was really fun to watch them, especially some of these for the first time, I just think that there were just some parts that weren't good and some parts that were, except for in that first one. And I'm telling you what, I'll go on the ride and I'll watch the first one all day.
Yeah.
I love the ride and the Ask a Ninja skit. That's my party. And the first movie.
The first movie, I know it's, a broken record here, but it really is good. Rachel and I both recently saw it. Disney is doing this kind of Disney 100. I don't know if I'd call it, what would you call it, a film festival? They're kind of like 100 days of magic like or something.
Yeah, it's fun.
They've got 8 films that they're re-releasing to theaters, and they play it for a 2-week period. So we saw Pirates on the big screen again, and it was so much fun.
Yeah. Blast.
Just to see it on the big screen. It was lovely print, and great sound in the theater. But it just was reminded, this was a film done right that was so surprising. I'm sure it was surprising for Disney too. And maybe that was part of the problem, with these subsequent films. But I'm so glad at least we have that first film, which is terrific. Yeah.
It's classic.
It is.
There's a reason it was the only non-animated feature that Disney picked for its Disney 100.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. True.
Yeah.
It's really good.
It's really great. So, Well, thank you both so much for taking the time and for being on the podcast. It's always fun to talk with you. Now, Jen, where can people find you on social media, etc.?
First, let me say I'm absolutely no one. I mean, my social media is JDE715. My name is Jen Edwards, but my best skill is picking really good friends. So that's the only reason that I'm talking to you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And Rachel, where can people find you?
Find me at Rachel's Reviews, and I do have a video on my channel ranking all of the Disney ride movies. It's a couple years old, so it doesn't have the new Haunted Mansion, but it's got the Tower of Terror, it's got Mission to Mars, it's got the Country Bears, which is
Ooh.
I don't know why I did it, but it was fun.
We shouldn't be complaining, right? We're gonna have to watch the Country Bears.
So check that out, and yeah, have a lot of Stanford and I do a ton of fun Disney content, and you can find that all at Rachel's Reviews, and check me out the Hallmarkies podcast as well, all over everywhere.
All right, well, thank you both, and hopefully the next time we watch the movie, it's going to be a better one than the Dead Men Tell No Tales.
Listen to my suggestions. What do I know?
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Well, that does it for this episode of the Movies Past and Present podcast. Huge thanks again to Jen and Rachel for joining me. All more information about the movies discussed in today's podcast can be found in the podcast notes on my website at moviespastandpresent.com. Subscribe to the podcast where you listen to your podcasts, and follow me on Instagram. I'm at moviespap, as in past and present. As always, I hope you will enjoy some good movies this week, whether they be from the past or the present. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, be safe out there and dedicate yourself to the truth.